Welcome to the next webinar in our AI in Action series, Master High Impact Insurance Marketing with Great AI Prompts. It's brought to you by Agent for the Future, a free resource provided by Liberty Mutual aimed at driving success and innovation across the entire independent agency channel. My name is Dale Steinke, and I'm the director of the Agent for the Future Advisors. We cut through the noise and guide independent agents like you to solutions that help you adapt to change, solve business challenges, and drive growth. I'm here today to add to a growing body of content and resources in our AI Insurance Agencies hub on agentforthefuture.com. There's a lot of high-level conversation encouraging AIs to use AI, but not a lot of solid examples of how it's actually being used out there. Today, I'm going to change that by demonstrating how you can use AI to dramatically improve your agency's marketing. You can connect with me on agentforthefuture.com or LinkedIn. Before we go any further, I want to note this disclaimer per company policy. This document may contain content generated by artificial intelligence. The author, myself, has reviewed the AI-generated content for accuracy and revised it where necessary. We know from our Agent for the Future research that there's a lot of interest in AI, but relatively few agency employees are using it. For a lot of people who haven't used AI, I frequently hear this question: I think AI can help, but how? Because you're here, it's possible you're thinking the same thing. You probably have a lot of other questions too, so please use the Q&A button to submit your questions that I will try to answer either throughout the session or at the end. AI can do a lot, from analyst to strategist to thought partner, but those are topics for another day. Today, we're going to focus on its content creation abilities. Most people at agencies say they're doing more, working harder than ever, and stressing out. I'm sure a lot of you can identify with that. For anyone who does marketing at an agency, the amount of work it can take can be daunting. You need all of these things that are on the screen here and more to attract and convert prospects. But at the start of the day, here's what you need, and here is probably what you have. I'm going to show you how you can quickly change that by relying on AI to be your marketing assistant. As I mentioned earlier, AI can do many things. For the purposes of today, we're going to talk about marketing and how to use it to create content using prompts, make it sound more like you or your agency brand voice, and what you're going to do not if, but when it gets it wrong. The content examples I'm going to show you today were generated using ChatGPT developed by OpenAI. And in case you're wondering, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. I also want to note that an increasing number of tools you use every day, including marketing automation, are building GPT-style functionality into their services. The principles I'll share today will be relevant to using those offerings. So, we're going to talk about creating content using prompts. And a coworker of mine who's an AI authority has said, the eloquence of your request dictates the richness of your response. Jill Brown, if you're out there, thank you. Let me explain what that means in terms of prompts. Say you have a friend and you ask them to make me a sandwich. You might get egg salad, roast beef, or even a peanut butter and sardine sandwich. Yes, that is a thing. But say instead you give them really specific instructions. They might think you're a bit micromanaging, but you're probably going to get what you expected. So here's what I might say if I were using AI to get a recipe for a sandwich. You're a fantastic cook. Please make me a sandwich. It should be a Reuben on lightly toasted rye with organic sauerkraut and non-dairy cheese. Oh, and avoid meat because I'm vegan. Now, I'm not vegan, but I'm using this example because I was trying to stump AI. Why does this approach of giving specific instructions work for generative AI? It's sorting through vast amounts of data stored in its what they call a large language model. Essentially, it's a database of information scoped from across the web and other data sources. It has all the knowledge in the world essentially at its digital fingertips. If it has the knowledge based on what it's come across, it will be able to give you a coherent answer. And just like asking a friend to make a sandwich, or a coworker to write some content, the better job you do of explaining what you want, the more likely you are to get the results you expected. For grins, I tried out both versions of the sandwich scenario with ChatGPT, and for Make Me a Sandwich, I got a recipe for a ham sandwich. Why is that the case? It's because I didn't tell it what I really wanted. And apparently, there's a lot of information in its large language model about ham sandwiches. But when I told it what I wanted in more detail, it gave me a recipe for a vegan Reuben. Yes, it turns out that is a thing. So, no, I didn't stump ChatGPT. So, ChatGPT 1, Dale 0. And when I asked an AI image generator to illustrate the recipes, I got this sort of creepy looking ham sandwich, but then I also got this attractive hot sandwich on the right, the vegan pastrami, I guess. And the AI generator even put a little bit of steam in there and a frosty beverage to accompany it. So just like sandwiches, AI prompts have specific ingredients or components. You don't have to use them all, but it helps to use more if you're trying to get a more tailored response. So here are generally the main components of an AI prompt. The first is the role. What kind of expert do you want it to be? Do you want it to be a marketer or an analyst or a coder? The instructions. What's the basic task you want to do? I want you to write some content for me or write some code, whatever it is. And then context would be giving it more background to get a result that's closer to what you're seeking. Requirements just go into more detail on what you want it to include in the output. And boundaries are, hey, these are the things I don't want you to put in the content. And then lastly, there's reasoning. And this is a tool you can use to find out how AI is going to generate the content that you've asked it for. You can ask it basically to explain, how are you going to do that? So for the sandwich example, here are the prompt components or ingredients that I used. I didn't use the context because that would mean giving it recipes, which I didn't have. And reasoning, I did not use it for this one, but I will show you an example of how that works a little bit later. With those prompting basics in mind, let's start by showing you how you can build marketing campaigns using great prompts. We'll start with an article that you could post on your website. To demonstrate what this might look like, I made up an agency, Insurance for Dayton, in Dayton, Ohio. Here's what I wanted it to do. You're an expert insurance marketer. Write an article for my website, Insurance for Dayton, that explains why a prospective client would want to do business with an independent insurance agent rather than using a captive agent or direct carrier. Okay, sorry, just checking audio here really quickly. Assume the person reading this knows very little about independent agents. Write a search engine optimized, friendly content that is aimed at homeowners and small business owners. So I'm asking for personal and commercial insurance near Dayton, Ohio, who are looking for insurance. Our ideal customers are interested in good coverage, not people searching for cheap insurance with low rates. So basically, what I'm saying is avoid price shoppers. So, with that in mind, here are the prompt components that I use to build that. The role, I asked it to be a marketer. The instructions, write content for my website. Requirements, I want it to be written for people who don't know much about insurance and who are in the Dayton area. And then the boundaries, look, don't send me people who want to know about low limits and SR22s. If you use a prompt like that, it will likely give you something like this for the first piece of content for your marketing campaign that you can point to make your case for doing business with your agency. And you can repurpose it for other things as well, for newsletters, for email campaigns, and so on. In this case, ChatGPT gave me about 750 words in a few seconds. It covered choice and flexibility, personalized service, local expertise, advocacy and support, and the value of long-term relationships. So it created a bunch of really good stuff that I could work with and edit to make a more finalized piece of content for my website and other marketing campaigns. It's a good first draft, but you might want to make changes or start creating other content on your list. The point with this is that it's a conversation. After you get a result, you can ask follow-up questions to tune the result or create other marketing elements. So, for example, you could ask it to change the tone, make it more light and engaging, or whoa, maybe tone it down a bit. You could ask it to remove a section or replace it with different content. You could ask it to make it shorter or longer. You could ask it to add in search engine optimization terms that you know work to attract customers. You could also create a version that sounds like Star Trek's Jean-Luc Picard, say Patrick Stewart, and you might get an output that says, need insurance that meets your needs, engage with an independent insurance agent and make it so. It's a silly example, but I'll show you in a bit how you can make the output sound more like you or your agency's brand voice. And the last question is one of my favorites. You'll probably get an answer something like this. You can ask it, what other information do you need to make a good output? And it will give you a long list of things. Okay, let's go back. I've seen a couple questions come in. I did see one asking about they'll be recording the session. Yes, there will. So you'll be able to come back and look at this later. So in this case, what it does is it asks for details. It's asking about your audience. What's their demographics and psychographics? What are the key messages that your agency uses that you want to make sure are in there? What's the tone and style, which we're going to talk about in a second here? And then what are other boundaries that it doesn't want you to, that you don't want it to cross, like low limit price shopping? And lastly, what other platforms might you want to put this content? Now, GPT can't do video. There are tools out there that do video, but GPT can give you a script. So earlier, I mentioned making GPT. Apologies there. Earlier, I mentioned making GPT give you content that sounds like Jean-Luc Picard. It's easy for it to do that because there's a ton of his catchphrases and quotes online that have been absorbed into the large language model. But unless you're insurance famous, there's probably not a lot of info about your tone and style from GPT to learn from. If you want it to sound like you or your agency's brand voice, you have to teach it because otherwise, you might sound like a robot. Oop, there we go. And examples of that I see in GPT are, let's delve into this topic, or dive deep. And in conclusion are phrases that you tend to see a lot in AI generated content that hasn't been edited. So to accomplish getting that style and tone of voice that you really want to have, you need to feed it a bunch of text you've written or content that matches your agency's brand voice. Several hundred to a couple thousand words should be plenty for most models. So in this example here, analyze and describe the writing style of the following text. You can also ask it to write a prompt that you can use for future requests to write more content in the same style. So when I did this for myself, this is how it describes my writing. The writing style and provided text is characterized by a professional yet accessible tone, incorporating both informative and engaging elements. And then it breaks down the key elements of that style: professional and informative, engaging and conversational. I make complex topics more relatable and easier to understand, and I use practical examples to illustrate concepts, enhancing, I hope, the readers or you here in the audience understanding. As part of the previous query, as I mentioned, I also asked GPT to write a prompt, which I saved and can use again and again to be more efficient and get more consistent results. Creating a prompt library is a great time saver and builds consistency. So I copy this and I have a separate document that I keep my my prompts in that I can go back and grab from. Most Gen AI tools also save your prompts too, so you can go back to previous queries and reuse them for other topics. So for me, compose an informative and engaging article on a specific topic tailored for a professional audience. It should have a conversational tone while maintaining authority, using industry-specific terminology and clear explanations. Structure the content logically, incorporating comparisons and practical examples to clarify complex ideas. And then lastly, aim to make the text both accessible and valuable to the reader, guiding them through the content with a structured FAQ or step-by-step format. Before we go any further, some of you may be thinking this: what if AI gets it wrong? Well, guess what? It is going to get it wrong. Don't get burned. Just like us humans, AI isn't perfect. And after all, it was created by humans. And so you really want to make sure that, it may not understand that it may not give you the correct information all the time. So you really need to verify everything, read through it, make sure it's accurate, consider it a rough draft. Everyone, especially AI, needs an editor. And also, strongly consider a notice or disclaimer on AI-generated content on your website. We see a lot of that sites now have it at the bottom of the site just to let people know that, hey, there may be AI content here. We've edited it, looked at it, but check with us. So I'll give you a real-world example of this. So in one version of this exercise, the AI assistant gave me testimonials for my Dayton insurance agency that looked like they came from real people. That's amazing considering insurance for Dayton doesn't exist. So I asked it where it got those. It said, oh, those are just examples. You should use real quotes from clients. AI wants to be helpful. It just doesn't always explain its reasoning, as flawed as it may be, unless you ask. Again, treat it like that first draft. Okay, now let's move on from the cautions and get back to developing the rest of the content you need to create. Just like us humans, it's easier for generative AI models to take tasks and do things in bite-sized pieces. Prompt chaining is a fancy way of saying, do things one step at a time to make sure it gets it right before you ask it to do the next thing. Create the article. Once you have that where you want it, ask AI to create social media posts. And once those look good, ask it to create the marketing materials and so on. So if you drop prompt chaining into a networking conversation, your AI cred's going to go up a notch. Okay, with that in mind, let's start on the next link in our prompt chain. Taking the article created earlier, let's use that as a basis for creating social posts. Because I'm in the same chat with GPT, I don't have to remind it to act like a marketer. But I do want to give it a task, more detailed instructions, and I want to I want to understand what standards it's using to create the content. So I've added a request for its reasoning to explain the optimization standards that it's following. And I've given it instructions saying write 5 social posts, each for LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. You could make that 10 or 20 or whatever number you want. I also asked it to follow our social media style and tone for the agency and encourage people to reach out to learn more. So I've given it reasoning, instructions, and requirements. And what happens is you get something like this. It gave me hashtags, emojis, all the kinds of things that I would want to have in a post. Now, I did the same thing for Facebook too. So you've got a bunch of posts to choose from versus staring at a blank screen. But maybe you like, for example, on this page here, you like the first 2, but you hate the rest. You can say, hey, take the first 2 posts, write 10, 20, 50 more based on those 2. And it will give you a bunch more posts. You can keep asking it to do it over and over and over again. AI never gets tired. You're going to get tired and run out of steam before AI does if you keep asking it to change things. Okay, you have the article and social media dialed in. Now you're going to work on the marketing automation. You've decided to focus the marketing automation for an after-the-sale pitch to monoline customers on the value of bundling policies with your agency. You like it, but it feels a little dry. Remember the Captain Picard example? You might try something along those lines to make it resonate with your ideal customers who happen to be Star Trek fans. Or to avoid potential copyright concerns, you ask it to target a specific generational demographic with pop culture references. But in this prompt, I ask it to avoid potential copyright or trademark issues with the output. Not doing that might get you references to things that could be a concern in a marketing message. And what you get is fast food wins, free guacamole, and binging hit shows. And who doesn't like a great redemption arc? Review it to make sure there aren't any lingering trademark or copyright concerns. Meal deal stood out to me, but from what I can see, it doesn't appear to be a concern. But if it said Happy Meal, a place with the golden arches could conceivably raise a concern. Say your agency also uses texts in your marketing automation. You can create drafts of those messages too. There you go. You've got something to work with rather than starting from scratch. And if what you see isn't exactly what you want, ask it to try again and again and again until you find what you like. Okay, we've been talking for about 20 minutes and created a first draft of an article, social media for LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, or X, an email campaign, and your text marketing, while also making it all sound more like you or your agency brand voice. But now you need visuals. Here are some common AI tools for creating images and video. Now, excuse me. You may have a library of photos that you have the rights to, or photos you've taken yourself that you can use. If not, you can ask GPT to suggest what a good image should look like, and it'll give you as many descriptions as you like. You can then use that to search for appropriate images or ask an AI tool to generate them for you. And I know there was some questions about copyright in the chat. This is one where I feel a little concerned about copyright. The legal landscape on this part of it, on the text, not so much, but the imagery is where we're starting to see some concern that images might have might cross the line in terms of intellectual property rights, trademark, and copyright. So I try to be very careful with using image generators and think twice about that. You also, if you're going to be using images from other sources, make sure you have commercial rights to use those as well. So that's just the bottom line for anything you're doing with marketing. Make sure those images that you have the rights to them. Okay, as you're looking for ways to streamline your efforts, boost your output, and get higher quality results, look to your AI assistant to get more done and to make your work easier. Remember to use these prompting components and those prompting components and save your prompts so you can do future campaigns more quickly. Make it a back and forth conversation to tune your results, and always, always, always check the work. So in a very short amount of time, you went from, in this example, from what you need to what you have by using AI to create the core elements of a marketing campaign. And you'll be better able to accomplish that by relying on a tasty mix of prompt ingredients or components to get better results. And if you're wondering what else AI can do, ask your AI tool whether it can perform a specific task. It likely can. Okay, we have some unanswered questions. I'm going to take a look at those and answer a few of those. And then I'll share some additional resources and answer a couple more questions. Let's see here. So question is about, do you think a paid version of the AI generator like ChatGPT provides different responses versus free versions? It's all about the algorithms, right? Yeah. So Patsy, so that is a great question. The free versions and the paid versions are a little bit different in that you may have access to a more powerful, more modern version of the model. So the algorithms do change as each of the models progress. And in the free ones, you may have less access to computing power, essentially. The tokens is what they call them. You may run out of those faster. So once you run out of tokens, it doesn't give you any more answers. With the paid version, you're going to have access to a lot more of those and not run into that problem. Also, the paid version versus the free, if you're using the free one, it's training the model. So anything you put into it, you run the risk of that getting out into the world in subsequent questions that people ask the chatbot. I did see somebody mention something about marketing to their entire database. Um, I get really nervous about dumping customer information into chat, even if it's the paid version, which is supposedly private. Really, I think what you want to do is anonymize data, and use that if you're going to dump customer information in there, so that people can't trace it back to a specific individual. But you have to be careful about it, and that's a much longer conversation. So there's that. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. So there's another question too about would it be more beneficial to be a Chat GPT paid subscriber versus the free version? Again, it depends on how you're using it. I think from a protecting the content that you're sharing on there, I prefer the paid version. I think that's generally what I shouldn't say I prefer. That's generally what people say you should be doing. And then I saw there's another thing here too about proofreading it before it sends out the content. GPT isn't sending out the content to anybody else. You're posting it. You're deciding what to do with it. So like, for example, in the marketing automation tools we talked about earlier, those generate content, a lot of them now, using AI. But again, you have to read all of those and make sure they're right. Do they sound like you want to say? Are they making promises that you can't keep, or are they spot on? Change it. Always read and edit that. Uh, so yeah, so there's somebody's asking about the paid version of Canva. Yes, read the fine print with Canva, but it should give you the rights to do imagery, so that you can use on your site, for commercial purposes. But definitely check that to make sure. Depending on the version you have, that might not be the case. And then I also see a question here about preference between using Copilot or ChatGPT. Copilot is a service of Microsoft, and it is built into a lot of the Microsoft tools. It both can perform these functions. I encourage you to try them both and see which one you like better for the results. Let's see. People saying they use the paid version and it's great. You have a good GPT you recommend. There's a bunch of them out there. I mentioned ChatGPT, mentioned Copilot, Gemini. There's others, and so Claude. So a lot of ones out there to try out. What I would suggest is give them a shot. Try the free ones and see what works best for you. They all have different tone by default. They all do some things better than others. It's a constantly evolving space. What you may be using today may be very different to what you'll be using 6 months or a year from now, as things evolve. There's a question about are there agencies out there that have had good returns or ROI using AI? Yes, what I'm seeing agencies do is finding a lot of tasks, like for example, the initial creation of content that can be really laborious and long, and really shortening the time it takes to do those things. There are other AI components and services out there that help you with things like doing policy renewal reviews, or coaching your people who are on the phone with clients and helping them give the next best answer along the way, or prompting them to ask additional questions to get more background. So there are a lot of things that I think are doing incremental increases in efficiency. I liken AI to okay, I'll use a copyrighted description here, or copyrighted superhero. So there's a guy called Iron Man. You think about Iron Man. AI is the suit. Tony Stark still needs to be inside the suit, but AI gives him that extra power, that superpower. So really, we look at AI as something that helps enhance your ability to do the things that matter most. Take your work away that's slowing you down, and giving you the chance to focus on the things that add value to the agency, like crafting better content and doing it more quickly. Let's see. Looking at some of the questions here. Yeah, somebody here is talking about putting quoting information in the GPT. Again, that would be a paid thing, and I would also anonymize it, like comparing two different quotes. You're seeing things now in the chat where you can compare multiple files. So there's some really interesting use cases out there. I see somebody mentioned Claude being really good at writing text. Perplexity Pro is another one too that's out there. Things around being, wow, there's a lot of questions flying in. And somebody else noted, Brian, that they all have their strengths and weaknesses. So very true, just like us humans. Okay. And then somebody asked about the policy renewals. There's a bunch of services out there, and actually, we'll have to talk about that in another webinar. And Shannon, if we could find the link to the webinar we did with Jeff Arnold and Jeff Roy, I think that might, and Brian Bartosh, that could be a good one to drop in chat, because that goes more into other tools and other ways that agencies are using AI. And okay, so a lot more questions. And while those are still coming in, I want to throw out a couple other things for you. If all of you are focused on marketing, this is something you really should know about. I'm on the same team with Colleen Flynn, who runs our agent giving program, which supports your agency's charitable efforts. And service is at the core of the insurance industry, and independent agents are leaders when it comes to caring for their customers and their communities. And I love what you all do in this way. And whether you donate your time, talent, or treasure, it sets you apart as a business. And it's easier than you think to do these things to care for your community. So one of the things that we have is a community giving guide, which is written by agents for agents and has real world tips to make it easy to get started giving back or to step up your game as your agency grows. In it, we debunk the idea that sharing why you give back is bragging. We hear this a lot. Really, it's about a window into your values. Marketing those values can build customer loyalty, increase local awareness, and boost employee morale. And AI is a powerful tool to help you work smarter, not harder. When communicating those values in more places and more often, you can do that to help you draft and adapt content for social, newsletters, job postings, and more. And one of the most unique ways we've seen AI in action is to assist Make More Happen award applicants. So Make More Happen awards recognize agents who give back by granting up to $10,000 to their charity of choice, plus free PR and marketing support to spread the word about their involvement. Over $360,000 is awarded every year. Applicants can use AI to draft answers to the application questions to create a stronger case and use the same language to apply for local small business awards. Once selected, AI can help write a month's worth of social posts and adapt them for Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn in less than a minute. Then recycle them again at key moments during the year, like holiday giving season or fundraising events. Applications for Make More Happen are accepted through this August and will be announced on a rolling basis beginning in March. So I hope you found this information useful. Our team provides insights and support on a wide range of digital, sales enablement, and marketing disciplines. If you're appointed with Liberty Mutual, Safeco, or State Auto, go to agentforthefuture.com/advisors to set up a conversation with any of us. For more AI resources, including a recording of the session, see our artificial intelligence hub on Agent for the Future. And please, reach out to me too. There's a lot more questions I'm not able to get to today, but would be happy to talk with you about anything AI. I want to thank you for joining us, for contributing your great questions and sticking with us through the entire session. Thank you too to our other advisors, Manny Barbosa and Shannon Chapman, for supporting this webinar. Go to agentforthefuture.com, again, to get more AI insights, along with a host of resources to help you with technology, talent and culture, agency operations, and niche and new markets. And in the AI insights, you will find a list of vendors that are commonly used by agents like you for in using AI. So The future's bright for independent agents, and we're here to help light the way. Now get out there and have a great day.